So free will is an illusion, and even the experience of free will is an illusion. Like, we don't even experience it.
I say that it's not merely that free will is an illusion. The illusion of free will is an illusion.
Right.
Like, there is no illusion of free will. And that is unlike many other illusions, that's a more fundamental claim. It's not that it's wrong, it's not even wrong. That's, I guess, that was, I think, Wolfgang Pauli, who derided one of his colleagues or enemies with that aspersion about his theory of quantum mechanics. So there are things that there are genuine illusions. There are things that you do experience, and then you can kind of punch through that experience, or you can't actually experience. You can't experience them any other way. It's just we just know it's not a veridical experience. You just take like a visual illusion. There are visual illusions that, a lot of these come to me on Twitter these days. There's these amazing visual illusions where, like, every figure in this GIF seems to be moving, but nothing in fact is moving. You can just like put a ruler on your screen and nothing's moving. Some of those illusions you can't see any other way. I mean, they're hacking aspects of the visual system that are just eminently hackable, and you have to use a ruler to convince yourself that the thing isn't actually moving. Now, there are other visual illusions where you're taken in by it at first, but if you pay more attention, you can actually see that it's not there, right? Or it's not how it first seemed. Like the Necker cube is a good example of that. Like, the Necker cube is just that schematic of a cube, of a transparent cube, which pops out one way or the other. One face can pop out, and the other face can pop out. But you can actually just see it as flat with no pop out, which is a more veridical way of looking at it. So there are kind of inward correlates to this, and I would say that the sense of self and free will are closely related. I mean, I often describe them as two sides of the same coin, but they're not quite the same in their spuriousness. I mean, so the sense of self is something that people, I think, do experience, right? It's not a very clear experience, but it's not, I wouldn't call the illusion of self an illusion. But the illusion of free will is an illusion in that as you pay more attention to your experience, you begin to see that it's totally compatible with an absence of free will. Coming back to the place we started, you don't know what you're going to think next. You don't know what you're going to intend next. You don't know what's going to just occur to you that you must do next. You don't know how much you are going to feel the behavioral imperative to act on that thought. If you suddenly feel, oh, I don't need to do that, I can do that tomorrow, you don't know where that comes from. You didn't know that was going to arise. You didn't know that was going to be compelling. All of this is compatible with some evil genius in the next room just typing in code into your experience. Just like this, okay, let's give him the, oh my God, I just forgot it was going to be our anniversary in 1 week thought, right? Give him the cascade of fear. Give him this brilliant idea for the thing he can buy that's going to take him no time at all, and this overpowering sense of relief. All of our experience is compatible with the script already being written, right? And I'm not saying the script is written. I'm not saying that fatalism is the right way to look at this, but we just don't have even our most deliberate voluntary action where we go back and forth between two options. Thinking about the reason for A and then reconsidering and going thinking harder about B, and just going eeny, meeny, miny, mo until the end of the hour. However laborious you can make it, there is a utter mystery at your back, finally promoting the thought or intention or rationale that is most compelling. This can drive some people a little crazy. So I usually preface what I say about free will with the caveat that if thinking about your mind this way makes you feel terrible, well then stop. Get off the ride. Switch the channel. You don't have to go down this path. But for me and for many other people, it's incredibly freeing to recognize this about the mind, because cutting through the illusion of the self is immensely freeing for a lot of reasons. That losing the sense of free will, so consciousness can't be an illusion because any illusion proves its reality as much as any other veridical perception. I mean, if you're hallucinating now, that's just as much of a demonstration of consciousness as really seeing what's, quote, actually there. If you're dreaming and you don't know it, that is consciousness, right? You can be confused about literally everything. You can't be confused that something seems to be happening. It's the seeming that is the cash value of consciousness. The problem with free will is that what most people mean by it is the flip side of this feeling of self. It's the flip side of feeling like you are not merely identical to experience. You feel like you're having an experience. You feel like you're an agent that is appropriating an experience. There's a protagonist in the movie of your life, and it is you. It's not just the movie, right? It's like there's sights and sounds and sensations and thoughts and emotions and this whole cacophony of experience, of felt experience of embodiment. But there seems to be a rider on the horse or a passenger in the body, right? People don't feel truly identical to their bodies down to their toes. They sort of feel like they have bodies. They feel like they're minds in bodies. And that feels like a self. That feels like me. And again, this gets very paradoxical when you talk about the experience of being in relationship to yourself or talking to yourself, giving yourself a pep talk. I mean, if you're the one talking, why are you also the one listening? Like, why do you need the pep talk, and why does it work if you're the one giving the pep talk, right?
Yeah.
Or if I say, like, where are my keys, right? If I'm looking for my keys, why do I think the superfluous thought, where are my keys? I know I'm looking for the fucking keys. I'm the one looking. Who am I telling that, that we now need to look for the keys, right? So that duality is weird, but leave that aside. There's the sense, and this becomes very vivid when people try to learn to meditate. Most people, they close their eyes and they're told to pay attention to an object like the breath, say. So you close your eyes and you pay attention to the breath, and you can feel it at the tip of your nose or the rising and falling of your abdomen. And you're paying attention and you feel something vague there. And then you think, why the breath? Why am I paying attention to the breath? What's so special about the breath? And then you notice you're thinking and you're not paying attention to the breath anymore. And then you realize, okay, the practice is, okay, I should notice thoughts and then I should come back to the breath. But this starting point is the conventional starting point of feeling like you are an agent, very likely in your head, a locus of consciousness, a locus of attention that can strategically pay attention to certain parts of experience. Like, I can focus on the breath, and then I get lost in thought, and now I can come back to the breath, and I can open my eyes, and I'm over here behind my face, looking out at a world that's other than me, and there's this kind of subject-object perception. And that is the default starting point of selfhood, of subjectivity. And married to that is the sense that I can decide what to do next. Right? I am an agent who can pay attention to the cup. I can listen to sounds. There's certain things that I can't control. Certain things are happening to me and I just can't control them. So for instance, if someone asks, well, can you not hear a sound, right? Like, don't hear the next sound. Don't hear anything for a second, or don't hear, I'm snapping my fingers. Don't hear this. Where's your free will? Just stop this from coming in. You realize, okay, wait a minute. My abundant freedom does not extend to something as simple as just being able to pay attention to something else than this. Okay, well, so that I'm not that kind of free agent, but at least I can decide what I'm going to do next. And I'm going to pick up this water, right? And there's a feeling of identification with the impulse, with the intention, with the thought that occurs to you, with the feeling of speaking. Like, what am I going to say next? Well, I'm saying it, so here goes. This is me. It feels like I'm the thinker. I'm the one who's in control. But all of that is born of not really paying close attention to what it's like to be you. And so this is where meditation comes in, or this is where again, you can get at this conceptually. You can unravel the notion of free will just by thinking certain thoughts, but you can't feel that it doesn't exist unless you can pay close attention to how thoughts and intentions arise. So the way to unravel it conceptually is just to realize, okay, I didn't make myself, I didn't make my genes, I didn't make my brain, I didn't make the environmental influences that impinged upon this system for the last 54 years that have produced my brain in precisely the state it's in right now, with all of the receptor weightings and densities, and it's just I'm exactly the machine I am right now through no fault of my own as the experiencing self. I get no credit and I get no blame for the genetics and the environmental influences here, and yet those are the only things that contrive to produce my next thought or impulse or moment of behavior. And if you were going to add something magical to that clockwork, like an immortal soul, you can also notice that you didn't produce your soul, right? Like you can't account for the fact that you don't have the soul of someone who doesn't like any of the things you like, or wasn't interested in any of the things you were interested in, or was a psychopath, or was had an IQ of 40, or there's nothing about that the person who believes in a soul can claim to have controlled. And yet that is also totally dispositive of whatever happens next.
There's something you said recently, which you think of culture as an operating system. So if we just remove ourselves a little bit from the conception of human civilization being a collection of humans, and rather us just being a distributed computation system on which there's some kind of operating system running, and then the computation that's running is the actual thing that generates the interactions, the communications, and maybe even free will, the experiences of all those free will. Do you ever try to reframe the world in that way, where it's like ideas are just using us, thoughts are using individual nodes in the system, and they're just jumping around, and they also have ability to generate like experiences so that we can push those ideas along. And basically the main organisms here are the thoughts, not the humans.
Yeah, but then that erodes the boundary between self and world.
Right.
So then there's no self, really integrated self to have any kind of will at all. Like if you're just a meme-plex, I mean, if there's just like, if you're just a collection of memes,
yeah,
and I mean, like we're all kind of like currents, like eddies in this river of ideas, right? So it's like, and it seems to have structure, but there's no real boundary between that part of the flow of water and the rest. I mean, and I would say that much of our mind answers to this kind of description. I mean, so much of our mind has been. It's obviously not self-generated, and you're not going to find it by looking in the brain. It is the result of the genes on one side and culture on the other meeting to allow for manifestations of mind that aren't actually bounded by the person in any clear sense. It was the example I often use here, but there's so many others, is just the fact that we're following the rules of English grammar to whatever degree we are. It's not that we certainly haven't consciously represented these rules for ourselves. We haven't invented these rules. We haven't. I mean, there are norms of language use that we couldn't even specify because we're not grammarians. We haven't studied this. We don't even have the right concepts, and yet we're following these rules, and we're noticing as an error when we fail to follow these rules. And virtually every other cultural norm is like that. I mean, these are not things we've invented. You can consciously decide to scrutinize them and override them, but I mean, just think of any social situation where you're with other people and you're behaving in ways that are culturally appropriate. Right, you're not being wild animals together. You're following. You have some expectation of how you shake a person's hand and how you deal with implements on a table, how you have a meal together. Obviously, this can change from culture to culture, and people can be shocked by how different those things are. Right? We all have foods we find disgusting, but in some countries, dog is not one of those foods, right? And yet, you and I presumably would be horrified to be served dog. Those are not norms that they are outside of us in some way, and they're felt very viscerally. I mean, they're certainly felt in their violation. If you are, just imagine you're in somebody's home, you're eating something that tastes great to you, and you happen to be in Vietnam or wherever, you didn't realize dog was potentially on the menu, and you find out that you've just eaten 10 bites of what is, really a Cocker Spaniel, and you feel this instantaneous urge to vomit, right, based on an idea, right? You're not the author of that norm that gave you such a powerful experience of its violation. And I'm sure we can trace the moment in your history, vaguely where it sort of got in. I mean, very early on as kids, you realize you're treating dogs as pets and not as food or as potential food. But the point you just made opens us to, we are totally permeable to a sea of mind.
Yeah, but if we take the metaphor of the distributed computing systems, each individual node is part of performing a much larger computation, but it nevertheless is in charge of doing the scheduling of, assuming it's Linux, is doing the scheduling of processes and is constantly alternating them. That node is making those choices. That node sure as hell believes it has free will, and actually has free will because it's making those hard choices, but the choices ultimately are part of a much larger computation that it can't control. Isn't it possible for that node to still be, that human node is still making the choice?
Well, yeah, it is. So I'm not saying that your body isn't really doing things, right? And some of those things can be conventionally thought of as choices, right? So it's like I can choose to reach, and it's not being imposed on me. That would be a different experience. So there's an experience of there's definitely a difference between voluntary and involuntary action. That has to get conserved. By any account of the mind that jettisons free will, you still have to admit that there's a difference between a tremor that I can't control and a purposeful motor action that I can control and I can initiate on demand, and it's associated with intentions, and it's got efferent, motor copy, which is being predictive, so that I can notice errors. I have expectations. When I reach for this, if my hand were actually to pass through the bottle because it's a hologram, I would be surprised, right? And so that shows that I have a expectation of just what my grasping behavior is going to be like even before it happens. Whereas with a tremor, you don't have the same kind of thing going on. That's a distinction we have to make. My intention to move, which is in fact can be subjectively felt, really is the proximate cause of my moving. It's not coming from elsewhere in the universe. I'm not saying that. So in that sense, the node is really deciding to execute, the subroutine now. That's not the feeling that has given rise to this conundrum of free will, right? So that people feel like the crucial thing is that people feel like they could have done otherwise, right? That's the thing that so when you run back the clock of your life, right? You run back the movie of your life, you flip back the few pages in the novel of your life. They feel that at this point they could behave differently than they did, right? So but given even given your distributed computing example, it's either a fully deterministic system, or it's a deterministic system that admits of some random, influence. In either case, that's not the free will people think they have. The free will people think they have is, damn, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done that. I could have done otherwise, right? I should have done otherwise, right? If you think about something that you deeply regret doing, right? Or that you hold someone else responsible for, because they really are the upstream agent in your mind of what they did. That is an awful thing that person did, and they shouldn't have done it. There is this illusion, and it has to be an illusion, because there's no picture of causation that would make sense of it. There's this illusion that if you arrange the universe exactly the way it was a moment ago, it could have played out differently. And the only way it could have played out differently is if there's randomness added to that. But randomness isn't what people feel would give them free will, right? If you tell me that, I only reached for the water bottle this time because there's a random number generator in there kicking off values and it finally moved my hand, that's not the feeling of authorship.
If you're wrong about your intuition about free will, what would that proof look like? What would
Well, that's the problem. That's why it's not even an illusion in my world, because for me it's impossible to say what the universe would have to be like for free will to be a thing, right? It's just it doesn't conceptually map onto any notion of causation we have, and that's unlike any other spurious claim you might make. So, like, if you're gonna believe in ghosts, right? I understand what that claim could be. Right? Like, I don't happen to believe in ghosts, but if it's not hard for me to specify what would have to be true for ghosts to be real. And so it is with 1,000 other things like ghosts, right? So, like, okay, so you're telling me that when people die, there's some part of them that is not reducible at all to their biology that lifts off them and goes elsewhere, and is actually the kind of thing that can linger in closets and in cupboards and actually it's immaterial, but by some principle of physics we don't totally understand, it can make sounds and knock, objects, and even occasionally show up so they can be visually beheld. And it seems like a miracle, but it's just some spooky noun in the universe that we don't understand. Let's call it a ghost. That's fine. I can talk about that all day. The reasons to believe in it, the reasons not to believe in it, the way we would scientifically test for it, what would have to be provable so as to convince me that ghosts are real. Free will isn't like that at all. There's no description of any concatenation of causes that precedes my conscious experience that sounds like what people think they have when they think they could have done otherwise, and that they, the conscious agent, is really in charge, right? Like, if you don't know what you're going to think next, right, and you can't help but think it, take those two premises on board. You don't know what it's going to be. You can't stop it from coming. And until you actually know how to meditate, you can't stop yourself from fully living out its behavioral or emotional consequences. I mean, the reason why mindfulness doesn't give you free will is because you can't account for why in one moment mindfulness arises and in other moments it doesn't, right? But a different process is initiated once you can practice in that way.
Say some point in the future, we are able to realize through engineering a way which is is consistent with Einstein's theory that you can have wormholes. You can travel from one point to another faster than the speed of light. And that would, I think, completely change our conception of what it means to travel in the physical space. And that, like, completely transform our ability. You talk about causality, but here let's just focus on what it means to travel through physical space. Don't you think it's possible that there will be inventions or leaps in understanding about reality that will allow us to see free will as actually, like, us humans somehow maybe linked to this idea of consciousness are actually able to be authors of our actions?
It's a non-starter for me conceptually. It's a little bit like saying, could there be some breakthrough that will cause us to realize that circles are really square, or that circles are not really round, right? No, a circle is what we mean by a perfectly round form, right? Like it's not on the table to be revised. And so I would say the same thing about consciousness. It's just like saying, is there some breakthrough that would get us to realize that consciousness is really an illusion? I'm saying no, because what the experience of an illusion is as much a demonstration of what I'm calling consciousness as anything else, right? Like that is consciousness. With free will, it's a similar problem. It's like, again, it comes down to a picture of causality, and there's no other picture on offer. I know what it's like on the experiential side to lose the thing to which it is clearly anchored, right? Like it doesn't feel. And this is the question that almost nobody asked. People who are debating me on the topic of free will, 15-minute intervals, I'm making a claim that I don't feel this thing, and they are never become interested in, well, what's that like? Because most people who don't believe in free will philosophically also believe that we're condemned to experience it. Like you can't live without this feeling. So
you're actually saying you're able to experience the absence of the illusion of free will.
Yes. It's not absolutely continuous, but it's whenever I pay attention. It's the same, and I would say the same thing for the illusoriness of the self in the sense. And again, we haven't talked about this. So
can you still have the self and not have the free will in your mind at the same time? Do they go at the same time?
This is the same. Yeah, it's the same thing.
So they're always holding hands when they walk out the door.
I mean, there really are two sides of the same coin.
Okay.
But it comes down to what it's like to try to get to the end of this sentence, or what it's like to finally decide that it's been long enough and now I need another sip of water, right? If I'm paying attention, now if I'm not paying attention, I'm probably I'm captured by some other thought, and that feels a certain way, right? And so it's not vivid. But if I try to make vivid this experience of just, okay, I'm finally going to experience free will. I'm going to notice my free will, right? Like if it's got to be here. Everyone's talking about it. Where is it? I'm going to pay attention to it. I'm going to look for it, and I'm going to create a circumstance that is where it has to be most robust, right? I'm not rushed to make this decision. It's not a reflex. I'm not under pressure. I'm going to take as long as I want. I'm going to decide. It's not trivial. So it's not just like reaching with my left hand or reaching with my right hand. People don't like those examples for some reason. Let's make a big decision. Like, what should my next podcast be on, right? Who do I invite on the next podcast? What is it like to make that decision? When I pay attention, there is no evidence of free will anywhere in sight. It's like it doesn't feel like it feels profoundly mysterious to be going back between two people. You know, is it going to be person A or person B? I've got all my reasons for A and all my reasons why not, and all my reasons for B, and that there's some math going on there that I'm not even privy to, where certain concerns are trumping others, and at a certain point I just decide. And yes, you can say I'm the node in the network that has made that decision. Absolutely. I'm not saying it's being piped to me from elsewhere, but the feeling of what it's like to make that decision is totally without a real sense of agency, because something simply emerges. It's literally as tenuous as, what's the next sound I'm going to hear, right? Or what's the next thought that's going to appear? And something just appears, you know. And if something appears to cancel that something, like if I say I'm going to invite her, and then I'm about to send the email, and then I think, oh no, I can't do that. So there was that thing in that New Yorker article I read that I got to talk to this guy, right? That pivot at the last second, you can make it as muscular as you want, it always just comes out of the darkness. It's always mysterious.
So right, when you try to pin it down, you really can't ever find that free will. If you construct an experiment for yourself, you're trying to really find that moment when you're actually making that controlled author decision. We know at this point that if we were scanning your brain in some, podcast guest choosing experiment, right? We know at this point we would be privy to who you're going to pick before you are. You, the conscious agent. If we could, again, this is
operationally a little hard to conduct, but there's enough data now to know that something very much like this cartoon is in fact true, and will ultimately be undeniable for people. If you're deciding what to, where to go for dinner, or who to have on your podcast, or ultimately, who to marry, right? Or what city to move to, right? Like you can make it as big or as small a decision as you want. We could be scanning your brain in real time, and at a point where you still think you're uncommitted, we would be able to say with arbitrary accuracy, all right, he's moving to Austin, right?
I didn't choose that.
Yeah, it was going to be Austin or it was going to be Miami. He's catching one of these two waves, but it's going to be Austin. And at a point where you subjectively, if we could ask you, you would say, oh no, I'm still working over here. I'm still thinking, I'm still considering my options.
In you thinking about other stuff in the world, it's been very useful to step away from this illusion of free will. And you argue that it's probably makes a better world because you can be compassionate and empathetic towards others.
And toward oneself. Radically toward others, in that literally hate makes no sense anymore. There's certain things you can really be worried about, really want to oppose. I'm not saying you'd never have to kill another person. Self-defense is still a thing, right? But the idea that you're ever confronting anything other than a force of nature in the end goes out the window, right? Or does go out the window when you really pay attention. I'm not saying that would be easy. Someone kills a member of your family. I'm not saying you can just listen to my 90 minutes on free will and then you should be able to see that person as identical to a grizzly bear or a virus, because we are so evolved to deal with one another as fellow primates and as agents. But it's, when you're talking about the possibility of truly Christian forgiveness, right, testified to by, various saints of that flavor over the millennia, the doorway to that is to recognize that no one really at bottom made themselves. And therefore everyone, what we're seeing really are differences in luck in the world. We're seeing people who are very, very lucky to have had good parents and good genes and to be in good societies and had good opportunities and to be intelligent and to be, not sociopathic. None of it is on them. They're just reaping the fruits of one lottery after another and then showing up in the world on that basis. And then so it is with, every malevolent asshole out there, right? He or she didn't make themselves. Even if that weren't possible, the utility for self-compassion is also enormous, because it's when you just look at what it's like to regret something or to feel shame about something or feel deep embarrassment about it. These states of mind are some of the most deranging experiences anyone has, and their the indelible reaction to them. The memory of the thing you said, the memory of the wedding toast you gave 20 years ago that was just mortifying, right? The fact that can still make you hate yourself, right? And like that psychologically, that is a knot that can be untied. So I don't think we should ever get rid of things like anger, right? So like hatred is divorceable from anger, in the sense that hatred is this enduring state where, whether you're hating somebody else or hating yourself, it is toxic and durable and ultimately useless, right? Like it becomes self-nullifying, right? You become less capable as a person to solve any of your problems. It's not instrumental in solving the problem that is occasioning all this hatred. And anger, for the most part, isn't either, except as a signal of salience that there's a problem, right? So if somebody does something that makes me angry, that just promotes this situation to conscious attention in a way that is stronger than my not really caring about it, right? And there are things that I think should make us angry in the world, and there's the behavior of other people that should make us angry, because we should respond to it. And so it is with yourself. If I do something as a parent, if I do something stupid that harms one of my daughters, right? My experience of myself and my beliefs about free will close the door to my saying, well, I should have done otherwise, in the sense that if I could go back in time, I would have actually effectively done otherwise. No, I would do, given the same causes and conditions, I would do that thing a trillion times in a row, right? But, regret and feeling bad about an outcome are still important to capacities, because I desperately want my daughters to be happy and healthy. So if I've done something, if I crash the car when they're in the car and they get injured, right? I do it because I was trying to change a song on my playlist, or something stupid, I'm gonna feel like a total asshole. How long do I stew in that feeling of regret, right? And what utility is there to extract out of this error signal? And then what do I do? We're always faced with the question of what to do next, right? And how to best do that thing, that necessary thing next. And how much well-being can we experience while doing it? Like how miserable do you need to be to solve your problems in life, and to help solve the problems of people closest to you? How miserable do you need to be to get through your to-do list today? Ultimately, I think you can be deeply happy going through all of it, right? And even navigating moments that are scary and really destabilizing to ordinary people. And I think again, I'm always up kind of at the edge of my own capacities here, and there are all kinds of things that stress me out and worry me. And especially something, if you're going to tell me it's something with the health of one of my kids, it's very hard for me. It's very hard for me to be truly equanimous around that. But equanimity is so useful the moment you're in response mode, right? Because it's the ordinary experience for me of responding to what seems like a medical emergency for one of my kids is to be obviously super energized by concern to respond to that emergency. But then once I'm responding, all of my fear and agitation and worry and, oh my God, what if this is really something terrible? Finding any of those thoughts compelling, that only diminishes my capacity as a father to be good company while we navigate this really turbulent passage. In our normal lives, we live, most of us who are lucky, right? Not everyone, obviously, on Earth, but most of us who are at some kind of cruising altitude in terms of our lives, where we're reasonably healthy and that life is reasonably orderly and the political apparatus around us is reasonably functionable. So I said functionable for the first time in my life through no free will of my own. So I notice those errors, and they do not feel like agency, and nor does the success of an utterance feel like agency. When you're looking at normal human life, right, where you're just trying to be happy and healthy and get your work done, there's this default expectation that there shouldn't be fires. People shouldn't be getting sick or injured. We shouldn't be losing vast amounts of our resources. We should so when something really stark like that happens, people don't have that muscle that they're I've been responding to emergencies all day long, 7 days a week in business mode, and so I have a very thick skin. This is just another one. What it was like, I'm not expecting anything else when I wake up in the morning. No, we have this default sense that, honestly, most of us have the default sense that we aren't going to die, right? Or that we should, maybe we're not going to die, right? Like death denial really is a thing. We're because, and you can see it, just like I can see when I reach for this bottle that I was expecting it to be solid, because when it isn't solid, when it's a hologram and my fist closes on itself, I'm damn surprised. People are damn surprised to find out that they're going to die, to find out that they're sick, to find out that someone they love has died or is going to die. So it's like the fact that we are surprised by any of that, we're perpetually diverting ourselves from some facts that should be obvious, right? And that the more salient we can make them, the more. I mean, in the case of death, it's a matter of being able to get one's priorities straight. I mean, the moment. Again, this is hard for everybody, even those who are really in the business of paying attention to it. But the moment you realize that every circumstance is finite, right? You've got a certain number of, you've got whatever it is, 8,000 days left in a normal span of life. And 8,000 sounds like a big number. It's not that big a number, right? So it's just like, and then you can decide how you want to go through life and how you want to experience each one of those days. I would argue that you don't want to feel self-hatred ever. I would argue that you don't want to really grasp on to any of those moments where you are internalizing the fact that you just made an error, you've embarrassed yourself, that something didn't go the way you wanted it to. I think you want to treat all of those moments very, very lightly. You want to extract the actionable information. It's something to learn. I learned that when I prepare in a certain way, it works better than when I prepare in some other way or don't prepare, right? Yes, lesson learned, and do that differently. So many of us have spent so much time, a very dysfunctional and hostile and even hateful inner voice governing a lot of our self-talk and a lot of just our default way of being with ourselves. I mean, the privacy of our own minds. We're in the company of a real jerk a lot of the time, and that can't help but affect. I mean, forget about just your own sense of well-being. It can't help but limit what you're capable of in the world with other people.
Without any explanation, what is the meaning of life?
I think it's either the wrong question or that question is answered by paying sufficient attention to any present moment such that there's no basis upon which to pose that question. It's not answered in the usual way. It's not a matter of having more information. It's having more engagement with reality as it is in the present moment, or consciousness as it is in the present moment. You don't ask that question when you're most captivated by the most important thing you ever pay attention to. That question only gets asked when you're abstracted away from that experience, that peak experience, and you're left wondering, why are so many of my other experiences mediocre, right? Like, why am I repeating the same pleasures every day? Why is my Netflix queue just like, when's this going to run out? Like, I've seen so many shows like this. Am I really going to watch another one? Like, all of that. That's a moment where you're not actually having the beatific vision, right? You're not sunk into the present moment, and you're not truly in love. Like, you're in a relationship with somebody who conceptually you love, right? This is the person you're living your life with, but you don't actually feel good together, right? Like, it's in those moments where attention hasn't found a good enough reason to truly sink into the present so as to obviate any concern like that, right? And I mean, that's why meditation is this kind of superpower, because until you learn to meditate, you think that the outside world or the circumstances of your life always have to get arranged so that the present moment can become good enough to demand your attention in a way that seems fulfilling, that makes you happy. And so if it's jujitsu, you think, okay, I got to get back on the mat. It's been months since I've trained. It's been over a year since I've trained. It's COVID. But when am I going to be able to train again? That's the only place I feel great, right? Or, I've got a ton of work to do. I'm not going to be able to feel good until I get all this work done, right? So I've got some deadline that's coming. You always think that your life has to change, the world has to change, so that you can finally have a good enough excuse to truly to just be here, and here is enough. Where the present moment becomes totally captivating. Meditation is another name for the discovery that you can actually just train yourself to do that on demand. So that just looking at a cup can be good enough in precisely that way. And any sense that it might not be is recognized to be a thought that is mysteriously unravels the moment you notice it, and you fall, and the moment expands and becomes more diaphanous, and then there's no evidence that this isn't the best moment of your life, right? Like this, it doesn't have to be pulling all the reins and levers of pleasure. It's not like, this tastes like chocolate. This is the most chocolatey moment of my life. No, it's just the sense data don't have to change, but the sense that there is some kind of basis for doubt about the rightness of being in the world in this moment, that can evaporate when you pay attention. And that is the meaning. So the kind of the meta answer to that question, the meaning of life for me is to live in that mode more and more, and to, whenever I notice I'm not in that mode, to recognize it and return, and to not be, to cease more and more to take the reasons why not at face value, because we all have reasons why we can't be fulfilled in this moment. It's like I've got all these outstanding things that I'm worried about, right? There's that thing that's happening later today that I'm anxious about. Whatever it is, we're constantly deferring our sense of this is it. This is not a dress rehearsal. This is the show. We keep deferring it, and we just have these moments on the calendar where we think, okay, this is where it's all going to land. It's that vacation I planned with my 5 best friends. We do this once every 3 years, and now we're going, and here we are on the beach together. Unless you have a mind that can really pay attention, really cut through the chatter, really sink into the present moment, you can't even enjoy those moments the way they should be enjoyed, the way you dreamed you would enjoy them when they arrive. So meditation in this sense is the great equalizer. It's like you don't have to live with the illusion anymore that you need a good enough reason, and that things are going to get better when you do have those good reasons. It's like there's just a mirage-like quality to every future attainment and every future breakthrough and every future peak experience, that eventually you get the lesson that you never quite arrive, right? Like you don't arrive until you cease to step over the present moment in search of the next thing. I mean, we're stepping over the thing that we think we're seeking, in the act of seeking it. And so it is kind of a paradox. I mean, there's this paradox it sounds trite, but it's like you can't actually become happy. You can only be happy. It's the illusion that your future being happy can be predicated on this act of becoming in any domain, and becoming includes this sort of, further scientific understanding on the questions that interest you, or getting in better shape, or whatever the thing is, whatever the contingency of your dissatisfaction seems to be in any present moment. Real attention solves the koan, in a way that becomes a very different place from which to then make any further change. It's not that you just have to dissolve into a puddle of goo. I mean, you can still get in shape, and you can still do all the things that, the superficial things that are obviously good to do, but the sense that your well-being is over there is really does diminish, and eventually it just becomes a kind of non sequitur.